All right, I think we're live right now. Hello, everyone. I'm Christian, Director of Technology here at the Data Incubator. It's 5:27, so we'll give people a few more minutes here to connect up, to join, and to find all the materials. If you are here and want to get a head start, you can actually find in the YouTube event description a link to a GitHub repository. That repository has all Sam's notes from the talk that we're giving today. So if you do want to follow along, check out that GitHub link, clone that repository, and you'll be able to start working a couple of minutes in advance here. All right, hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Christian Mascardi, and for those of you who are just joining, I'm Director of Technology here at the Data Incubator. We are a free fellowship program for PhDs and master's students and graduates. You can learn more about that program by going to our website at thedataincubator.com. We also offer customized corporate training for folks already at companies who want to learn a bit more about data science, data analytics. Again, you can just learn more at our website. But today we are here to learn a little bit about data science from someone very cool in industry for about the next 30 minutes or so. So the way we've done these talks in the past is we've had cool folks come in, speak again for about 30 minutes on something in their work that's particularly interesting. We've had Becky Tucker, a data scientist from Netflix, as well as Jess, the CDO of Quantopian, come in. You can check out those videos in the historical feed if you're interested in hearing more about some work that's going on in those companies. But today, we have someone who's not only working at a really cool company, Betterment, but it was also a former fellow in the very first cohort, I believe. Is that right, Sam?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just when the data incubator was figuring out how to do everything.
Yeah. That was the one cohort I was not around for. I joined in August of 2014, and right before the second cohort started up. But yeah, without further ado, let me introduce Sam Swift, Director of Analytics and Data Science at Betterment, and again, former fellow here at the Data Incubator. One last point before we get started. Feel free to sign in and post questions in the Q&A section or in the chat on the YouTube channel. If you ask any questions there, at the end, we'll be doing a brief Q&A, about 10-15 minutes, with anything you found interesting from the talk. But Sam, I'll let you take it away.
All right, thanks so much for the introductions. Thanks so much for having me. So yeah, as Christian said, I'm the Director of Analytics and Data Science at Betterment. I've been here 2.5 years, which is the whole time since I was at the Data Incubator. So I don't presume that everyone knows exactly what Betterment is. So I'll do a little bit of an intro on that, and then we'll get into sort of an interesting question that came across my desk and that I got to explore in the last couple of months since the election. So let me know. Somebody let me know if this if you can't see this screen. But so yeah, just to introduce Betterment, in case you're not super familiar. Betterment is a lot of things. So a lot of people know, if you're a little bit familiar, it's that one of those tech companies that's doing something with investing or something with money. And that's not wrong, but there's sort of a lot of pieces of that helps understand what questions we ask in the data science world about our customers and about what's going on with the company. So we're a registered investment advisor, which is an SEC term. That's a regulated service you can provide. That means that we can tell consumers, people like all of you, we can give recommendations about what would be best for you in terms of your investments, in terms of planning for retirement, which things to invest in, how to manage your dollars into different retirement accounts, and all of those kinds of questions. We, as a technology company, are registered and certified to give out that kind of advice to all of our customers. But we're also a broker-dealer. So broker-dealer means that we actually do the trading. We actually take, we give out the advice, people deposit their money, and then we take that and we actually trade it into the stock market, into a portfolio of ETFs. And then we actually hold and manage and trade those portfolios for our customers. So those are the two main steps or halves of the biggest part of our business, our retail-facing business. And then we also have a B2B business where we provide 401ks for technology companies and other sort of mid-stage companies. And we also have a white-labeled advisor platform. So if you're a financial advisor who's thinking about how to do things sort of the newest way, and you want to spend more of your time answering interesting questions with your clients, we'll provide the technology stack to do all of that portfolio recommendation, financial planning, and trading all through our platform, so the advisor can spend time on the interesting stuff. We also have a human advisor referral network. So our retail customers who are interested in getting that human touch as an added service, we can refer retail customers out to that. But then sort of in terms of identity, we are a tech company, and that's a lot of what makes this an interesting place to work and an interesting contributor to the industry, which is that financial services and all of the services I just described have existed for decades. And what we're bringing to it is a fresh perspective on how to solve problems that are really customer focused, experience focused, right? We're trying to make these problems easier and more pleasant, and a part of your life that isn't quite so drudgery. And then all of that is with the mission to empower people to do what's best for their money so they can live better, right? We want this to be a part of people's lives that feels like something they're doing right, something that's easy to know what the right choice is and what you have to do to make progress. So just a couple of quick sort of glances into the product so you can sort of picture what customers are doing. So this is an example of our investment advisor function. So we say, if you're saving for retirement and you're planning on retiring at 59, you have X balance so far, here's the portfolio we recommend, and here's how that's likely to play out over the next 30 years. Similarly, Betterment, the broker-dealer, this is an example of what you see in your Betterment account when you look into the details of your portfolio. So we have a globally diversified portfolio of ETFs, exclusively ETFs. So we don't do any single stock picking. Betterment's investing philosophy is entirely passive, low cost, and diversified. So you can see, across U.S. stocks, mid cap, small cap, developed foreign markets, emerging markets, bonds, corporate bonds, right? These are all things that a Betterment customer is invested in, whether they're interested in that level of detail or not, right? You give us $100,000, we will push it out into all of these different asset classes for you based on your goals and your financial needs. And then, of course, we are a RoboAdvisor. This is the most popular term that you'll hear about us and some of our similar companies in the media. And one of the funniest things about being a RoboAdvisor is that it means you're guaranteed to get a picture of a robot at the top of every article about the company, but that it's not super clear what it means beyond that, right? So I think our interpretation of why this phrase has caught on is that we are offering these financial services that are fairly familiar to the market, right? We're helping customers figure out what they need and figure out how to get there, and then follow that plan and execute on it over a long number of years. What we're doing is adding technology to that, and that's really sort of what's easiest to relate to for a lot of audiences, is that we're taking this guy that used to look like a suit and tie advisor, and now he's a robot, so to speak. But the illustration of robot is often more entertaining than it is sort of accurate in terms of what goes on here. And then one more background slide just to give you context for the company. The company's been live with customers on the platform since 2010, so we're not brand new on the block, but in the scope of financial services, that's pretty recent. We are in New York City on 23rd, so we're born in New York. The entire staff, everybody that works for the company, lives in New York. Our whole customer service and trading and top to bottom, we're all here in the same big office. We're currently about 220 employees, and we have $8 billion in assets under management. That's $8 billion comes from over 230,000 customers. Those 230,000 customers come from our retail, our customer-facing operation, as well as from over 300 401k plans and 300 advisory firms through that white label advisory product. So hopefully that gives you decent context on the company and what kind of work we're doing. I will check real quick that we don't have any questions or problems. Nope. Okay, so I'll continue on. So one of the things that's interesting about doing data science at Betterment, and I should clarify a little bit. I manage the analytics and data science company at an investment company, right? But I don't do investing work, right? So we heard in past instances of this series about from Quantopian, figuring out trading strategies, right? That's not the domain or the scope of the team that I run. So our team manages marketing analytics, right? So what did we spend trying to acquire customers, and how efficient was that, and how could we make it more efficient? Product and customer behavior questions. So we launched a new thing. How are customers using it? How is it changing their behavior? How is it changing how valuable customers are and how successful they are reaching their goals? And then financial analytics, right? How much are customers worth to us? How much revenue do we expect next quarter? All of those things are under the analytics and data science domain at Betterment. But what we don't do is predictive models about what the stock market's going to do next quarter. So apologies if you were expect any hot tips of that format. So one thing that's interesting about my job here is that we do lots of big product things, right, and marketing things, and try to influence customer behavior. But if you look at a simple data series like the number of logins, you'll see right away there are sort of some salient events and trends going on, and what those are for the most part are things that we don't control, right? They're exogenous to the business that we're running. It's what happens in the market, what happens that's newsworthy that affects people's investments or the way they think about investments. And so interpreting customer behavior in light of these events is something that we do a lot to try to understand how it'll affect the business, but also how we can better understand our customers. And the more that we understand our customers, the better we can design a product that meets their needs and really, sort of creates that positive feedback loop between what the customer does and what we can do for them and those outcomes. So in this case, I thought it'd be interesting to focus in on this most recent salient event, the 2016 presidential election. So just to refresh us in case it's not fresh enough still, this is the New York Times chance of winning the presidency updated hourly, or updated sort of live through the course of November 8th. And what this shows, if you don't recall, is that going into the election, or going into when polls close, this is maybe leading into about 7 or 8 p.m., there was a very high probability, if you ask most people, that Hillary Clinton would win the election. And then from about 8 p.m. through midnight, that probability changed dramatically and quickly as polls closed and as expectations were revealed to be true or not. So over those 8 hours into the middle of the night and then through to the next morning, the question is, what happened to people's beliefs about the financial markets and more broadly, and then what happened to our customers? So this graph is of S&P 500 futures overnight, and so you can see so S&P 500 futures are during this whole period, right? So after 4 p.m. when the market closed, this is when we found out new information about what was going to happen in the country in the next 4 years. The markets aren't open, but you can still trade based on your expectations of the stock market in the futures market. I won't go into those details, but this is basically what it looked like. So between 8 p.m. When people started to learn what was likely to happen in the election, and midnight when it was clear, the futures market plummeted. So it actually hit its limit down, which means that the futures market dropped by 5%, which is when the futures markets are paused in various venues. But then from midnight, once we sort of knew what the new world was, that Trump would be president, the futures market actually recovered almost exactly back to its starting point. And when the market opened, there was no dramatic movement. So you can align that with that changing probability of the election outcome. And this is not the fanciest data science I've ever done. This is 2 graphs, one made transparent on top of the other. But you can see the time course. These x-axes are lined up. And so you can see the time course where, as the belief about the election was uncertain, the market was dropping. And as the belief about the election became more certain in its new state, the market actually recovered back to its previous state. So the question for this data science sort of demo with Betterment data is, what did our customers do during that time, and what can we learn about the motivations for their decisions in doing so? And quick overview on how we're going to approach that is that we don't know our customers' political beliefs, right? That's not part of becoming a Betterment customer, is telling us who you want to vote for or how you feel about politics. But we do know our customers' zip codes, right? So because we're a financial service provider, we have validated and known to be true information about customers, including their zip codes. And it's public data that what the share or the the vote share outcome was by counties in the country. So what we do is we take customers on the left here and their zip codes, map zip codes to counties, which is interesting because it's not actually one-to-one, and then look up for each county what the vote share was for the 2016 election, and then ask, does that tell us anything about their behavior that we've seen on the platform? The main thing that we're going to be using as a dependent variable or as the outcome of interest here is allocation changes. So in the Betterment platform, you put your money in, you allocate your money to different financial goals, say retirement, saving for a house. In each of those goals, you get to make a decision about what the ratio, what the percentage of stocks and bonds should be in that goal. And it's sort of a unidimensional scale, right? We'll take care of, if you say 73% stocks, we'll take care of which actual ETFs to buy with that. But you get to decide where it should lie on this spectrum between 0 and 100. Which means once you've made that decision, you're free to change it at any time, and that's what we call an allocation change. If you come in and you say, I had my retirement goal set at 73% stocks. I'd like to change it down to 25% stocks. That's an allocation change. And so what we get from that is you are coming from 73, you are going to 25, and that in many cases, we can interpret that as an expression of market expectations. So moving from 70% stocks down to 20% stocks will mean that you experience fewer of the benefits or risks from the stock market changes in the near future. And so our question is this geographic proxy for politics related to people's allocation changes? Can we explain what happened to people's allocations based on where we know that they live? And so now we're going to jump into R code that I used to explore this question. So the code that I put up, so I believe a link to a repository with this code is available in the live feed description. And I guess I'll just give a little bit of background. One of the things that I thought would be interesting here is that at Betterment, we use an almost entirely R stack for all of our analysis, all of our analytics and data science work. So these are some of the tools that we use in almost all the work we do. And it should be sort of a good sample of the things that we use most commonly. Happy to answer questions at the end about the details. I wasn't able to make the repo actually reproducible, so you can't run this yourself entirely for a few reasons. One is that I used a few functions from our internal Betterment R package. So we have an R package with all of the convenient tools for our working environment. It gives us things like access to our databases without specifying a lot of details. So you can see here, this query_db function. This is a local Betterment function from the BetterUtils package, where it makes the right assumptions about what the creds are that I need and what database and what hosts I'm connecting to. So those are all sort of convenience things. But let me take a step back and give you an overview of what we're going to do. So if you're not familiar with R Markdown, this document is R Markdown. R Markdown is R's answer, similar to a Python notebook that many of you might be familiar with, of interspersing description, like this text here that describes what the document is about. This document has relatively little description, but description about your results interspersed with code and the code that you use to visualize and present your data. So I thought I would walk through each of the steps that it took me to get to these results, which involves getting data both from our internal proprietary records of allocation changes, but also from election data and geographic data, the cleaning and transforming, so how all that gets merged together, the summarization, so what it means to sort of how should we describe how many allocation changes happened in each period and by which groups of customers, and then the visualization, which will be sort of where we end here in terms of drawing conclusions from it. And I I've got 8 minutes right now, so I will run through these sort of descriptively, but happy to answer questions about the details. So these are the libraries we're using, and this first step of getting data is interesting. These first steps are things that you could do from your machine. So this is getting identifiers for each county in the US. That comes from the Census Department. Getting a map of every zip code in the United States to every county. And what's interesting is this is many to many. So the post office and the various municipalities didn't coordinate on their designation of geography there. And so there's a many to many mapping between zip codes and counties. So we'll get that. One technique that we use here to make things more reproducible internally is that this is a CSV that I had to get from some that I did get from some sort of random arbitrary website. And the first thing I would maybe naturally do is have that on my local machine and read that in to tell this, to compile this analysis. What we don't want in our company workflow is an analysis that someone else on my team can't run because the CSV is saved on my computer and I didn't tell anyone where to get it. So what we do is we put those CSVs in Google Drive and access them like this. So I'll start running through things. So I'll make sure that I've loaded all my libraries, and then fread is a data table package, data table function that can load this text file without me telling it anything else. And then Google Sheets can take data from this Google spreadsheet and turn it right into a data table. So you can see here, zips.gs. You can see what data we got from that. So zip codes and counties. You can see already zip codes always have this leading zeros problem. So we've got some cleanup to do ahead of us. Then votes, right? So there's actually no single central sanctioned source for what was the count of votes in every precinct or every county. A website called townhall.com did a great job aggregating all of those county level results. And then someone named Tony McGovern put all of those in a nice machine readable format on GitHub. So that's where I'm getting my vote data. And then there are a couple of sources of proprietary Betterment data, which is all of our customers and what their zip codes are and when they joined Betterment. And so obviously I can't share that data. So this is why you won't be able to reproduce everything we look at here. As well as all their allocation changes. So for each user, what stock were they coming from? What stock allocation were they going to? And when did that happen? So I sort of pseudo-coded out the idea of where this data is coming from, but I'll actually just load some saved data for the purpose of this demo. Okay, so the interesting steps here on cleaning this data. I won't go through each of these steps, but what's interesting in sort of I want to represent that this is proportionally always a bigger part of doing data science, especially sort of in the real world, quote unquote, than fitting crazy models, right? So figuring out how to clean up, get out all the junky data and figure out how to find the keys that allow you to join one thing to another is a big part of the work that we do day to day. And so I wanted to represent that here in the workflow. So examples are, we have votes in this vote data, the count of votes for the Democratic candidate and a count of votes for the GOP candidate. What we want is the percentage of votes for, let's say, the Democratic Party in each county. So this is where we do that summary, and this is the number we'll actually be using. And then, since counties and zips are many to many, how do we summarize that? That all happens here. All right, so I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. So we merge in, for all the allocation changes, we say, when did that allocation change happen? And we merge in what was the political context of the user who made that? Are they living in a place, in a county, where the vote share was 55% Republican, 55% Democrat, or fairly evenly split? So let me make sure I run all of this. and you can see we get some allocation. So this is the record of 219,000 allocation changes with the user data merged into it. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is summarize that for each period in time. So we want a curve, and maybe I'll sort of run this and skip ahead so that I have a picture to show you. We want to say how many people were making allocation changes through that period of time where the political situation was uncertain and where we saw the general stock market do this. So what does that look like for our customers? Once we summarize that data, we get a picture that looks like this. So there's a couple things I'll point out about what's going on here. This gray period is the period overnight where we weren't sure what was going to happen with the election. It's the same period as this, right? Same gray period as here. This dotted line is what had been typical in terms of the number of allocation changes made per hour divided by the number of customers that were funded on the platform during then. So you can see this is a really low number. Most people aren't making allocation changes very often. So what do we see during this interesting period? We see a huge spike in allocation changes, many multiples of the rate of allocation changes we see normally. But again, reference this y-axis here. This is still a very small number of our customers. We're seeing many more allocation changes than normal, but it's not that the majority of our customers are doing this. So in fact, during this period, it's about 2% of customers who did something, who took some action in response to the election. And that's exactly what we want. Most people shouldn't be investing based on sort of new information day to day. So this is great. This is the overall effect, but we know that we summarized it by political affiliation. So, or not necessarily affiliation, but the average vote in the county that they're coming from. And we see first slice at the results, not a big difference, right? So the blue line is customers coming from counties that voted mostly Democratic, red line from Republican counties, and we don't see a big difference. So both customers from both parts of the country were more likely than usual to come in and make an allocation change. But the next question we can ask is, how did that change based on what direction you are moving, right? So this is a graph where each dot is the stock allocation that the customer was coming from and the stock allocation that they were going to. And so you can see here, each of these changes, this is someone moving, these dots moving up are people moving into more stocks. They're taking a more bullish position on the stock market. This weight here below the zero line are people moving out of stocks towards more conservative bond portfolios. And so we can start to see a pattern here, right? That the general trend mirrors what we saw in the broader stock market. The customers overnight here in this critical period, or in this period of uncertainty, were moving to the safer, less risky bond portfolios. And general story looks like, from this individual level data, that that's true for people hailing from all parts of the country. But let's see if we can be a little bit more quantitative about that. And these are all ggplot calls that I'm doing here, which lets you sort of describe everything that you want to see come out of this chart. So this is a box plot of all three groups. And again, you can see sort of what's typical for each group. So you can see that the median change for people from Republican counties in the middle of the night was to decrease their stock allocation by 50%. That's a pretty big change, right? That's very meaningful in terms of your investment outcomes. But really, our focal question here is whether that behavior is different by party affiliation or by likely party affiliation. So we have one last graph here as we hit the end of the hour, where we take that same data. So this is the same x-axis of time, the same gray bar, which shows the overnight period where people were uncertain about the market, with one line that smooths. This is a lowest regression, a localized smooth regression that summarizes the changes made by people from those areas of the country during each part of this day. And I think there's a couple of interesting things. You can see the confidence interval around that trend in these gray alpha areas. And you can see one thing that's interesting is that the confidence interval is much tighter for our customers from democratic areas because we have a lot more of them. So we tend to attract customers from the coasts and from urban areas, which means we have a lot more people from blue zip codes or blue counties than from red counties. But we see two interesting periods here. One is before the polls had closed, we saw a lot more optimism from people in blue counties than from red counties. The average customer from a red county was already moving quickly out of the stock market or out of stocks and into bonds before the polls closed. And then we see as polls start to close and we start to learn about what's going to happen tomorrow, people from democratic counties follow suit, and they're also running out of stocks through the middle of the night. As this new future becomes more clear, and it's more clear that Trump will be the president, we see customers from the red counties moving back into stocks much more quickly than people from democratic counties. And so that's the main takeaway. So the way that I would summarize this insight into our customer behavior is everyone's human. People from all parts of the country. A lot of customers were likely to take this shocking news, this unexpected outcome, and think, how does this affect my finances? What should I do? And generally, the movement was move away from stocks overnight while things were uncertain. We were still sorting it out. And then back into stocks the next day as the broader stock market was more stable than expected, and it didn't seem like anything was really going to fall apart right away. But that just based on where people live, we can see significant differences between how quickly and sort of the directions through the day that customers from those different ends of the spectrum ended up making those decisions. All right, so that's the end of this quick view into Betterment customer behavior. The slides that I shared, this link is publicly available and linked to from the repository. And you can see those same plots that we generated here in summary to tell that story. So I'll switch now to my face so that I can answer questions as they came in. So let's see. Questions include, Sam, what's the best way to get all these investing jargon terms into my system? Can you recommend a book or YouTube channel that explains the basics? Yeah, that's a great question. One that I sort of tackled too when I started here. So I came from a organizational behavior background. So in academia, I studied the psychology of decision making, not necessarily investing. And so when I landed here and it was a good fit, I did a lot of learning about investing, and I picked up a lot on that topic. I would say that our resource center, so betterment.com/resources, is exactly what we have put all of our energy into producing to answer that kind of question. Or that, that sort of field of questions. So betterment.com/resources. For general questions about sort of what does it mean to invest in stocks, and why do we why does Betterment hold a sort of a passive philosophy on investing, things like that. One great book is A Random Walk Down Wall Street, which explains sort of the history of trying to beat the market and trying to invest efficiently. And those are all things that are pretty consistent with our philosophy here. Okay, next question. Mostly out of curiosity, is it common for market futures to correlate that well with election uncertainty? I think that was shocking, how directly you could match that time series. I haven't done sort of any historical research on that intraday election outcome. One thing that would make that difficult is that the notion that we have an expected election outcome that's varying by the minute is pretty recent, right? So New York Times, 538, these kind of outlets that now we take for granted in terms of a quantitative view on how the election's going, and sort of over the course of the campaign, but also while the election is happening, is something that we can really only describe over the last 2 elections, basically. So it would be hard to describe whether that's common, but I think other market events you can see. We can see down to the 15-minute granularity when news hits and when people start to react to it by logging in, by looking at our resource center for relevant content, and by making decisions in their account. Next question. So Sam, is the end goal of this data treatment to know who of your clients are more sensitive to election matters when it comes to their stocks? Yeah, I think one of our goals and our sort of mission here is to ask, how can we provide the most personalized and effective financial advice to all of our customers? And we try to do that at a scale that means that we don't get to sit down and have meetings with most of them, right? People want a service that provides sort of the implementation and advice without needing to pay for the overhead of having trained professionals who are there to really learn everything about every customer. And so one of the things that we can do to address that is try to figure out which kinds of advice, which kinds of information are most useful to each customer. Here, I don't think that we'll realistically label customers as politically motivated or likely to react during an election, right? That's pretty high granularity that maybe in another 3 to 5 years we'll have that kind of a model where we say we know exactly what is what kind of information from the world is gonna move the needle for you. We're more interested now in saying what kinds of events affect our customers, and how can we tailor the messaging, the information, the UX, to guide people through that information in the way that they make the most effective decisions. So one thing that we've done around big events like this, around Brexit and around the election, is have just-in-time notifications that give the relevant background and context to customers who are considering taking an action. So you'll see a notification right together with the allocation change interface, so that if you're thinking about making an allocation change on the eve of the election, you'll see the relevant content there, so that we can match that content to the relevant customers without trying to make that entirely a prediction problem. So this is more of sort of a comprehension phase, more than sort of a raw prediction phase. How often do investors make and then reverse allocation changes in a short time frame? How do you account for that in models of investor behavior? So our customers in each account are limited to making 1 allocation change per day, per trading day. So we don't aspire to be sort of a day trading platform, or to build a tool that lets people trade actively. That's definitely not the service that we're aiming to provide. And so the purpose of allocation changes is to reflect changing financial needs. If it turns out that you're going to buy your house 5 years earlier than you thought, you should adjust your allocation appropriately to match that new horizon. Or if you lost your job, maybe you want to reduce your risk in your investments while you firm up the other risk you're taking on. So we don't have customers that make multiple allocation changes, like within hours or within the same day. We do see a very small number of customers who make an allocation change out of stocks one day when the market is going down, and then back in the next day when the market's going up. Generally, we put all of that in a category of being too active, more active than is likely good for you, and trying to chase that information. And so we try to discourage that generally sort of across, as a principle, that you shouldn't be making allocation changes that quickly if something hasn't changed in your life. And then the last question that I have here in the queue, since Democrats were selling their stock, what is the general ratio of all the users on Betterment in terms of Democrats and Republicans? Good question. And that was sort of central to, maybe I mentioned that after it was asked. But that was central to this analysis, right? That I wanted to pick thresholds for counties in terms of categorizing people, so that there'd be enough in each set, in each bin. Generally, about, if I had to use round numbers, about 80% of our customers are in Democratic-leaning areas. So obviously, we don't know the political preferences of each customer, but most of our customers are from coastal and urban areas, which tend to skew blue on the map. All right, that's the end of the questions. Thank you so much for having me. Christian, do you have wrap-up thoughts?
Yeah, thanks so much for coming in, Sam. I have one question for you I was kind of curious about. So with Brexit, did you run a similar analysis and find anything similar on customers in the US, either by party affiliation or some other demographic trait?
Yeah, so each of these big news events, anything that is enough that people are wondering internally and externally sort of how it affected customers, we'll do an analysis like this. This is the first time that it seemed directly relevant enough to try to join in this political dimension. For things like Brexit, really what we're watching is the magnitude. How many customers are affected? How can we help? During most of these events, we're actually running various experiments in the site with different kinds of messaging, different timing, different mediums. So do we send you a push notification? Do we send you an in-app notification in the mobile app? Do we leave something waiting for you in the web app if you happen to show up? And if so, what kind of messaging is most helpful to each customer? So we're using, one interesting thing about this business is a lot of it hinges on how things go during these, these exciting moments, but we don't control how many of those there are. And so, we get one or two really dramatic moments a year, and those are our moments for it to be sort of a laboratory to figure out how we can most effectively help people process that new information and make the right decisions.
Very cool, very cool. Yeah, that's all really interesting. This has been a really great presentation, a lot of really interesting stuff here. Thank you so much again, Sam, for hopping on here and kind of letting us know about what's going on behind the scenes at Betterment. Thanks to everyone who came and asked some great questions, followed along. Again, if you want to take a look at the code Sam was showing off, that is on the GitHub page, which you can find in the video description at the live stream here. Aside from that, be sure to check out Betterment, betterment.com, I believe is the website. Is that right, Sam?
Yep, that's right, betterment.com.
Perfect. Betterment.com. And if you want to learn more about this stuff, more about data science, interested in becoming a data scientist yourself, please check out our website at thedataincubator.com, learn more about the fellowship, and maybe even apply. So I hope to see your application in there. Thanks so much, Sam. I think that's all the time we've got today, and take care.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks everybody for showing up. Bye.
All right. Bye.